Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. So what do you got for us, Claire?
So today we're headed to the birthplace of the Frisbee.
California.
Nope. It's also officially the Nutmeg State because early 19th century Yankee peddlers were supposedly so clever they could carve They carved and sold fake wooden nutmegs to unsuspecting customers.
What shady son bitches.
Because at first I was like, how did they do that? But nutmeg, back in the day, wasn't sold pre-ground like it is today. It came as a whole nutmeg seed, which was extremely hard, almost like wood, and it required a special kind of grater, which were expensive, and thus the scheme, which is really shitty. But this party state, because you're not going to guess it based on that, it was also the first state to enforce speed limits, so you can thank them for that. In 1902, they required drivers to stay below 12 miles per hour.
I did this one. I can't remember what it is, though. I don't remember. Illinois.
Close.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're not close at all. Connecticut.
Oh. All right. So what are we doing in Connecticut?
If you shut your hole, I'll tell you.
I'm not nice.
But we're going to start out in the winter of 56. This wasn't the atmosphere of New York or Chicago. We're going to small towns, particularly Hartford, New Britain, and Coventry.
Hartford, as in Gilmore Girls?
Yes, if that helps you. But places where people literally left their doors unlocked. Little teeny tiny towns where nothing bad happens.
Till now.
Mm-hmm. Where a tailor is shot in the face inside of his shop.
Oh.
And then an hour later, 2 men are executed at a gas station, one of them with his infant daughter sitting in the back seat.
Oh, that's terrible.
A week later, a grocery store owner and his wife are beaten nearly to death, then a liquor store owner, then a married couple inside a shoe store, then a druggist in Hartford. All with no witnesses, no fingerprints, no motives, just bodies and fear piling up across the state.
Jeez.
Police don't know who they're looking for. They didn't know how many killers there were, if they're connected or not. All they knew was this. Someone was moving around, shooting people in the head, and disappearing into the night. The newspapers would eventually start calling this person Mad Dog. But the truth is more complicated and far more terrifying, because this story doesn't actually start in 1956. It starts 6 years earlier, with a feller that I'm going to introduce you to, who's on death row.
I don't want to meet him. Sounds mean. I was kidding. Carry on.
But his name is Joseph Taborsky. And we're going to go to March 23rd, 1950. It's his 26th birthday, when he and his brother Albert walk into Lewis's liquor store and decide to rob the place. Now, this is, again, before that spree of killings terrorized Connecticut, before the headlines, the manhunt, blah-de-blah-de-blah. But Lewis Wolfson is the owner of that liquor store. They march in there and shoot Lewis in the face. Once the two flee, Lewis's sister finds brother, but he's not dead. He would spend the next 3 days in the hospital, going in and out of consciousness. He survived just long enough to describe his attacker as light-haired, baby-faced, and of average height. Unfortunately, that description doesn't match Joseph at all, because Joseph is a big dude. He's about 6'4", dark-haired, and definitely not a baby face. Now, it is fortunate for Joseph, because they're not going to be looking for anybody that looks like him. But his luck would run out, because a year into this, Joseph's brother Albert's going to finally let his guilty conscience weigh enough on him to walk into the police station and confess. He said he was involved, but his brother Joseph was the one who pulled the trigger. Joseph was arrested, tried, and on June 7th, 1951, sentenced to die in Connecticut's electric chair. Albert was sentenced to second-degree murder and got a life sentence. Joseph would spend 52 months on death row, 4 birthdays, 4 Christmases, 4 years of waiting to die. And then everything changed. Albert suffered a mental breakdown in prison. Doctors would declare him incurably insane. Courts ruled his testimony unreliable, and on October 6, 1955, Joseph would be released from prison as a free man.
Oh.
Because without Albert, there is no case.
Oh.
Joseph would tell reporters he was done doing crime. He would even tell his ma he'd never break the law again. But it would be less than a year, and Joseph would pick up a gun again. Which brings us to where we started, December 15th, 1956. The first sign that something was wrong came just after 5 p.m. in Hartford. 67-year-old tailor Nikolai Leon was working alone in his shop when 2 men walked in. One of them raised a gun and shot him in the face. Nikolai survived, but just barely. He would tell police later the shooter wore a red polka dot handkerchief over his face, and at the time, investigators thought it was just a robbery gone horribly wrong.
To say the least.
Well, they had no idea that this was only the beginning, because just an hour later, 6 p.m. in New Britain, the killers struck again. Gas station owner Edward Kapursky was forced into a boiler room and shot. Minutes later, a customer named Daniel Janowski pulled up with his infant daughter in the back seat. He was robbed, ordered into the bathroom, where he was shot twice in the head. The killers left $133 untouched in the register. A bus driver found Daniel's baby girl left alone in the car. Police were horrified, the public was terrified, and investigators realized they weren't dealing with a robbery crew. They were dealing with executioners.
It's terrible.
Then just 6 days later, grocery store owner 64-year-old Arthur Vinton and his 62-year-old wife were pistol whipped inside their shop. Their 3-year-old granddaughter watched the attack happen. Joseph ordered his partner, Arthur Culombe, to kill the child. But Arthur couldn't do it. You can't just shoot a 3-year-old little girl. So he'll take the little girl to another part of the store, fire into the floor, and tell the little girl to be quiet and pretend she's dead. Then they make off with $100. The Vintons actually survive and describe both attackers as tall, dark-haired men. It wasn't much, but it was more than the investigators had before.
That poor little girl. And all the adults, but...
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Then, the day after Christmas, 65-year-old Samuel Cohn was found shot twice in the head behind the counter of his East Hartford liquor store. The register tills emptied and the drawers left open. Same method, same precision, same coldness. Police now believed they had the same 2 men who were responsible for the other attacks. But because this is 1950, this is the 1950s, there's no DNA, there's no surveillance cameras, they still have no idea who's doing this. So the East Hartford mayor would offer a $1,000 reward for information leading to the capture of Samuel's killers. January 5th, in North Haven, the killers walk into a shoe store owned by Frank Adelafi. They beat him and left him for dead, but he would survive. But 2 customers, unfortunately, don't. Bernard and Ruth Spivey were forced to kneel and were executed with shots to the back of the head. They would make off with $62 between what they steal out of Frank's wallet and what they steal out of the register. But Frank will remember something important when he talks to police. The tall man that came into the store asked for size 12 shoes, which didn't seem like much then, but it will be. Then we're going to get all the way to January 26th in Hartford again, when 69-year-old John Rosenthal is shot twice in the chest inside of his drugstore. His son Henry was in the basement his son Henry heard the shots from the basement and goes running upstairs when he sees a tall man with dark hair at the register. He throws a medicine bottle at the man. The man turns and fires a shot at Henry. Luckily, he misses, but that startles the man enough that he runs. Henry was able to identify the getaway car as a dark Studebaker.
Yeah.
The physical description matched earlier eyewitnesses. By now, Connecticut is in full panic. Liquor stores start shortening their hours and closing early. Owners arm themselves, and still the killers keep moving. Because that was late January. I mean, you figure it's just, there's no leads, you know?
Yeah. The pharmacy guy, his son's lucky that he didn't pursue him.
Right. I think because they didn't expect anybody to come up from the basement.
Yeah.
Like it was all just a...
Or throw anything at him.
Well, he did. He threw medicine.
Yeah, I know. But like good, quick thinking, good on him. But he's very lucky that he didn't continue to...
Die next to his paw.
Right.
Well, police are going to form a special task force, and even though they'll spend round the clock looking for leads, they'll have no names. But that's going to change when investigators start connecting the dots between surviving victims. The tailor had seen a man with a red polka dot handkerchief. The Vintons described two tall, dark-haired men. Henry saw a tall man fleeing in a dark Studebaker. And Frank, the shoe store owner, remembered the attacker asking for a size 12 shoe.
That's so weird.
Well, the way I figured it was like, maybe it's just like I don't know what the statistics are on this one, but maybe in that time frame, like size 12 was pretty rare.
Well,
So it was like a weird thing to walk in and ask.
it's weird that he walked in and he's like shopping. They didn't have his shoe size, so he got mad and decided to go on a killing spree. Like, what?
I don't know, because I'm not a burglar, but I don't know if it was a case of like they would want to send him to the back so they could catch him off guard, because some of these people were shot in the back, like the back of their head. So if he's headed that way, they don't see it coming.
Bunch of cowards.
Mm-hmm. That detail stuck with Lieutenant Sam Rome, the man leading the special task force. Now, Lieutenant Rome ordered his team to pull old prison records. They looked for men who matched the physical description, men with violent histories, men who recently were released, men who wore size 12 shoes, ideally. But again, this is the 50s, so there's no computerized records, no interdepartment databases. If you want to compare suspects, you literally had to dig through paper files by hand, solving crimes with a filing cabinet.
Real police work.
Mm-hmm. And one man is going to jump right off the page. Joseph Taborsky. A man who had already been on death row once. A man who had walked free less than 2 years earlier, or prior to the things. A man who had promised reporters he'd never break the law again. Investigators dug deeper and found something else. Joseph had a known associate, a man with a long criminal history of petty crimes, a man with a mental capacity of a child, a man who had a history of following stronger personalities like a shadow. His name was Arthur Culombe. And suddenly, the task force had its first real suspects. They showed the shoe store owner, Frank, who he positively will identify Joseph and Arthur as the men who walked into his shop and pistol whipped him. So on February 23rd, 1957, police make their move. Joseph and Arthur were arrested on suspicion. Nothing more, no murder charges yet, no hard evidence tying them to the spree, but investigators were betting on one thing. If they separated the two men, kept them isolated, applied pressure, one of them was going to crack. Joseph was taken to the Hartford County Jail. Arthur was placed in the police barracks, and the waiting began. It didn't take long, but fortunately for them, it's the 50s because they let these two sit for 4 days.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And then Arthur asked to speak with detectives, and then he talked. He confessed to 8 holdups and 6 murders. He described the crimes in chilling detail, the routes they took, the weapons they used, the victims they shot. He even led investigators to the shallow pond where he and Joseph had thrown the revolver used to kill Edward and Daniel at the gas station.
Wow. He really did crack.
Mm-hmm. Detectives describe Arthur's memory as uncanny. He remembered everything, even the smallest details. But he insisted on one thing throughout the entire confession. Joseph pulled every trigger. Arthur said all he did was drive the car. He did pistol whip some people and followed orders, but that's all he did.
Oh, is that all?
Mm-hmm. Now back at the county jail, Joseph had no idea Arthur is confessing until he picks up a newspaper, which I feel like a guard casually just shoved in there.
Mm-hmm.
And a guard would later say Joseph looked surprised and almost stunned when he read the article that talked about how Arthur was cooperating with police and giving a full statement. And that's when Lieutenant Rome made his move. He brought Joseph's mother to the jail. He let her speak to her son, and he recorded the entire conversation. Whatever she said worked.
Can they do that? I mean, I guess they can because
she's not an attorney.
Well, and I guess it's the same idea as like the recorded police or jail calls or whatever.
Yeah. And on March 1st, Joseph confessed. He admitted to the murders of Edward and Daniel, then he admitted to the rest of the spree. And then in a twist that shocked even investigators, he confessed to the 1950 murder of Lewis Wolfson. The murder he had once denied and beaten in court and had been put on death row. It was finally over. The spree that terrorized Connecticut for 6 long weeks, the spree that left 6 people dead and several more injured, The spree that turned small businesses into battlegrounds. It all came down to two men, one who wanted control and one who wanted approval. Joseph and Arthur were both charged with murder. The state of Connecticut prepared for one of the most intense trials in its history. By the time the case went to trial in May 1957, which I thought was wild because they definitely did things quicker.
How long?
Well, they were arrested in February.
Yeah.
So May.
Yeah, that's pretty quick. What's the trial? I thought he confessed. Oh, I guess he could always say, I take it back.
They still have to do all the due diligence and sentencing and all of that. So,
but is he pleading guilty or he just confessed to the police?
They just confessed. By the time the case went to trial in May 1957, Connecticut had been waiting months for answers and for justice. The courtroom was packed every day. Reporters lined the hallways. Families of the victims sat shoulder to shoulder with curious onlookers. Joseph and Arthur were tried together for the murders of Edward and Daniel, the two men killed at the gas station on December 15th. Prosecutors didn't need to charge them with all 6 murders. They only needed to convict one to secure the death penalty, so that's what they focused on. The trial lasted for 10 weeks.
Whoa.
The longest in Connecticut's history at the time. Arthur's defense argued that he functioned at the mental level of a child. They begged the jury not to send a man with the mind of a 9-year-old to the electric chair. Because after all, Arthur couldn't even read. He couldn't tell time. He was incredibly impressionable. Joseph, on the other hand, was the dominant one. The shooter, the planner, the one who escalated everything.
You know what, though? I can tell you my nine, well, he's 10 now, but if I went up to him and I was like, hey, let's go kill people, he's not going to be like, yeah, let's do it.
You should test that theory. Don't actually kill anybody, but see how he reacts. He's always got interesting perspective, is why I ask. So it's just like...
We can talk this one out later.
Yeah, I'll be pins and needles.
Anyway, carry on.
Now, Joseph's attorney tried something different. They claimed Joseph had been psychologically damaged by his first death row experience, that he had become numb to life and death, that he was mentally ill himself.
No.
But the prosecution had something stronger than any defensive theory. They had 2 confessions, ballistics, and surviving witnesses. And not only that, but a pattern of violence that was impossible to ignore. And then there was also Joseph, who sat in the courtroom laughing at gruesome evidence, making threatening gestures towards spectators, all while showing no remorse.
All right.
So on June 27th, the jury would return with their verdict. Guilty for both men, on all counts.
Good.
The judge sentenced Arthur and Joseph to death.
And it's in the 50s, they better get it.
One of the Hartford papers published an editorial the next morning that read, "If ever capital punishment is justified, it is justified for these 2.
Preach.
While Arthur began filing appeals immediately, Joseph did the opposite. He refused to fight his sentence, refused to ask for clemency, and refused to delay the inevitable. In a letter to the governor, Joseph wrote, "It is more humane to kill a convict than to make him suffer years of imprisonment." He was, in every sense, an execution volunteer. And on May 17, 1960, at 10:30 p.m., Joseph was led into the Connecticut's execution chamber, the same room he had cleaned as a young inmate 14 years earlier. Witnesses said he walked calmly, he didn't speak, didn't look at reporters, didn't look at the guards. He simply sat down in the electric chair and they flipped the switch. Minutes later, he'd be pronounced dead.
All right.
Joseph became the last person executed in Connecticut's electric chair, and also the last person executed in that state for the next 45 years.
What about the other?
But for Arthur...
Yeah.
His story doesn't end in 1957. He appealed his conviction all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and in June 1961, something extraordinary happened.
Mm-hmm.
The court overturned his conviction.
What?
They ruled that Arthur's confession had been obtained through coercive interrogation, that 4 days of questioning without a lawyer, despite his intellectual disability. Which, it's a good thing they already executed the other feller, because they probably would have been out eventually.
Did he get out?
Let me finish. But I'm just saying is all. If they would have, done the whole... I don't know how it would have turned out, but I was at least glad he was already dead for this one. But Connecticut prosecutors knew they would never get another death sentence, so they offered Arthur a deal. Plead guilty to second-degree murder, and he would receive life in prison. Arthur accepted. He spent the rest of his life behind bars. On December 22nd, 1970, at age 46, Arthur would be found dead in his cell. Officials would say he died of natural causes.
Sure.
And that was the last living half of the Mad Dog duo would be gone.
Man, what a piece of shit. Both of them.
Yeah, I was going to say which one.
Well, the first one, Joseph, he's a real piece of trash.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally had no remorse for the first guy that he killed, because when he was given a free pass and given the opportunity to learn his lesson and do better, he chose to do worse.
He tried for a little while.
He did. He killed lots of people.
Well, I agree. But after all of that, even the governor, who had once opposed capital punishment, he would now publicly support the death sentences for going forward. And that case became a turning point, really a cautionary tale of a reminder of what could happen when a violent man slips through the cracks and when a vulnerable man falls under the influence. Joseph remains the only person in Connecticut history to be sentenced to death twice for 2 separate murders. And the spree he and Arthur carried out, 6 murders in 6 weeks, is still considered one of the most brutal in the state's history. And suddenly, you've got 2 guys driving around shooting random business owners in the head. No motive, no pattern, no warning. Felt like anyone could be next.
'Cause it's true.
But it is crazy to think that, like, they weren't picking, and I think even nowadays, because I do like to compare what would have made something different if it happened now versus then, is I realize we would have video footage, most likely, but I feel like the crazy part with theirs is they were random people, and I feel like when you have random victims, it makes it way harder.
Yeah, because there's no way to connect anything to lead you back to it, because it was just crime of opportunity.
But I feel like it was definitely some amazing police work because they were just digging through files.
It really is amazing, the cases that that were closed out before they had all the computer technology that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
Those police officers had to do some serious detectiving.
Well, and you know those rookie cops is who they had, like, look for this feller and flip through this till you telling me we find somebody who had a size 12 shoe.
Did you just fall?
I put my leg back, so I did teeter-totter a little.
I heard it. You sounded like you just dumped yourself out of your chair.
Nearly.
Your fellers, pieces of trash. I feel sorry for the other families. I know the guys went to prison, they died, all that, but I couldn't imagine being one of the other family members. You're not getting the justice for your deceased family member. Yes, the bad guy's going away, but there's no mention of your loved one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know how I would feel, only because I would, they can only die once. So realistically, all their crimes they deserve to die for. So I don't know how I would feel that they were never officially convicted, other than knowing they confessed this is our guy, but we don't want to lump everything together because if this goes bad, we got another lined up.
Yeah.
And then there's also the cost of all of that.
Yeah. It just sucks.
Yeah.
I understand the logic behind it, but it just sucks if you're one of those surviving family members or even one of the surviving victims.
I don't know how much I would care because they're still being punished. Like, it's still not going to take away my hurt whether they get life in prison or the death penalty. I don't know if it would bother me if they still got the death penalty, if I'd be like, I don't care. They're still dead. They got what they deserved.
Yeah.
Because my person's name being in the paper that they did this to them I don't feel like it would affect me.
Claire's heart of...
It would if they got, like, if they were found not guilty and were just loose walking the streets, then I'd be like, what the fuck?
Claire's heart of stone.
No, I'm just saying what the newspapers have.
It's what would be in the court.
I don't know. I don't know how it was explained to them, but I would imagine it was like if they don't get killed from this one, we'll go with this one.
Yeah.
But I thought it was also wild that Joseph's defense attorney was brought up the whole, He was in jail once before. He was on death row, and that's what made his head not so good.
Yeah, no.
Because I feel like he opened the door for that.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Because guess what? He was on death row because he already murdered someone.
Right. The prosecutor was probably like, yes, thanks for bringing that up. Now that you have, let us tell you that he also was arrested and found guilty of this crime. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it?
Man, what a piece of trash.
Mm-hmm. Twofold, because he was also looking for people who he could manipulate and have as his wheelmen with his brother.
Yeah.
And I feel like that one was a manipulation of crazy sorts, because you figure it was his birthday. So he was probably like, you can't say no, it's my birthday. And his stupid brother was like, all right. And then pow! And then he's like, I didn't agree to that.
I'm not getting out of the car on the next one.
Well, he didn't do the next one.
Yeah, only because they got caught.
He found another simpleton.
Man. Well, thanks for that. Murder in Connecticut. I used, by the way, that exact same hint when you said they were the first one with the speed limit and it was 12 miles an hour. I remembered the 12 miles an hour, and then it was just like, I couldn't remember.
Your trivia skills aren't very good.
Sure not. I think the recording's going to be fine. Your puppy definitely had ants in her pants. I don't know if it'll pick it up.
Probably so. I feel like she's squirrely because I just got home and we came up here. But if I wouldn't have brought her up, she literally would have busted in the gate one way or the other, and it just squeaked outside the door. Now she feels ashamed.
Oh, that wiggling. Now she's tired. She needs a nap. Got anything else?
Not that I know of.
Does Edwina want to throw in any more of her 2 cents or ear clapping?
Come on, get them all in there. You want to sneeze? Heavy breathe. That's it. There's the mic. I don't know why she's heavy breathing into it.
Because you were doing it earlier.
She's like, let me talk to my people. Ugh, your breath stinks.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mindfucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.